I've just fell over my own book pile. Hello everybody, it's Katie here. So it's been quite a while since I filmed a video. The one I uploaded recently was actually filmed back in May. I just did not have motivation to film and edit videos in June, but I was doing a lot of reading, so there's that. I was also reading up on a lot of discussions and adding books by Black authors to my TBR pile. A lot of the discussions that people have been having over the past month, things like the publishing paid me tag over on Twitter, they've really opened our eyes to the stark contrast in numbers between white authors and Black authors. That made me look at my own shelves as well and made me see what I needed to change. So I've been doing a lot of reading on real life events. I wrote up a blog post about that and I'll leave a link to it in the description, along with some more links for information to do with Black Lives Matters as well. This is something that can't just be a trend, and I know a lot of people have been treating it that way, and I can see that happening. We can't just be posting a few things on social media for a couple of weeks and then deciding that's enough activism for the year. This is something that's ongoing and that's not going to change until we all do more to help. So yeah, I've been looking a lot at authors and books that I need to be reading more of. So yeah, even though I wasn't really filming videos in June, I was getting a lot of reading done, so I figured I'd just give you a reading update. So into the stories that I've been reading recently. The first one up is Solitaire. Alice is an author that I love very much, and I was born for this as one of my favourite YA contemporaries, but I hadn't actually read Solitaire until recently. I remember the hype on Tumblr when this book was being released, and it was one that I was desperate to read, but at the time I didn't have any money to get books, so I couldn't buy it. And my library didn't get it in, and then it kind of just slipped my mind for a while. But then I found this copy in a charity shop a few years ago, but unfortunately that was during the time where I was in my reading slump, so I didn't actually get to it until now. I had really mixed feelings about this because I did appreciate the story a lot, but I do feel like I definitely would have enjoyed it more if I'd have read it at the time it came out. There are so many references to Tumblr fandoms that I used to be hardcore involved in, and a lot of feelings that I related to back then, so I feel like it would have been the perfect book for me back in 2014 and 2015. I enjoyed it now, I just know that I would have enjoyed it more. But now that I've read it, I've finally started Heartstopper, and I love it very much so far. It is adorable. So yeah, the next book that I read is Wonderland by Juno Dawson. I spoke about this in my Books for Pride Month video, so I won't go over the plot too much again, but it's fairly obvious that it's a modern retelling of Alice in Wonderland. It's very clever, it has such a diverse set of characters. Juno is just such a fantastic writer. We need more books like this. Next up, I finally read Vicious by V.E. Schwab. This has been on my shelf for so long. It's the first time I've ever picked up a V.E. Schwab book. I loved it a lot. There were times when I felt like the story was a little bit slow and I was kind of just waiting for things to happen, but the characters are what makes this story so special. I loved the characters so much. I love the whole anti-hero vibe of it. Whenever I consume any type of media, I do tend to really love the villains. Not in a apologetic trying to defend them kind of way. I do recognise that they are terrible people, but yeah, villain stories just always interest me. So if you don't know what this book is about, it follows two college roommates, Victor and Eli. Together they work on this theory that they can create superhuman powers by going through a near-death experience. It works for both of them and they each end up with a power. They realise that there are other people who have come close to death and have powers also, and Eli starts to think that these people need to be eliminated from the earth because they are unnatural. So he takes it upon himself to get rid of them, and this is basically Victor's journey to stopping him from doing just that. So yeah, it is a very character-driven story. If you like books that revolve around the concept of found family, then I think this is something that you'll really enjoy, because it throws characters that are completely different from each other together, but it works really well. So yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. The next book I read was Odd One Out by Nick Stone. This has been on my shelf for a while, but I kept it for Pride Month because I knew that it was a story that focused on sexuality and discovering yourself. So this story follows two best friends, Courtney and Jupiter. Jupiter has always believed that she is only sexually attracted to women, but she realizes that that might not be the case. They also make friends with a new girl in the school called Ray, and there are some very interesting dynamics between the three of them as their relationships with each other change over the course of the story. This is one of those books that's kind of a mess, but in a good way. It's all over the place, but I feel like teenagers at that age are all over the place. High school is a confusing time. Sexuality is confusing. It can take people a long time to properly figure out what they want in life. It is confusing and messy, and I feel like this book captures that perfectly. So I think it's definitely a relatable story for a lot of people. And Nick Stone's a really great writer. The book was kind of split into 3 different parts following each character. So rather than switching constantly between them, we have one character's story, the other one's story, and then the other one. And I think that was a really clever way of pacing out the events. So I'm glad that I finally got to read this one. So the book that I most recently finished reading is Game Weavers by Rebecca Zahabi. I can't really say too much about this one because it's not out until much later in the year, but to give you an overview of the plot, this book is kind of set in a world that's exactly the same to ours, except for the most popular sport. Instead of it being football, it's actually a sport called twine. So in this world, humans are able to weave creatures from a twine that comes out of their hands, and people who are talented at this can start playing twine. So the sport of twine consists of one big battlefield that's like a football field, but there are 2 players, one at either end, and they craft out their own battlegrounds and their creatures fight against each other, and whoever has the most ground at the end of the game wins. Just that alone is such a good concept for a story. Like, the minute I read the blurb for this book, I knew it was going to be one that I'd be highly interested in. For someone who doesn't really like sports, I sure do love fictional sports. I'm sure you'll see me discuss this book in full closer to its release date. It's definitely one of my favourite reads from the year so far. So the final things that I've been reading lately have been some rereads. I have been slowly making my way through the Percy Jackson books again with the news that we are finally getting a TV adaptation. It's what we deserve. It is. It made me really want to reread the books, so I'm currently on the 3rd one. I've missed these characters so much. I'm very happy to be in this world again. Then my other read was Check Please. With the comic ending recently, it just got me really emotional, and I had to go back and reread everything. This story is just so wholesome and so pure. If you haven't read it yet, then the entire webcomic is free. Please go and check it out. It will make you happy. So they were the books that I've been reading lately. Other than reading, the other thing that I've been doing is rewatching a lot of TV. So in Solitaire, there are a lot of references to fandoms that I used to be heavily involved in. And at one point it mentioned Merlin, and I used to be obsessed with that show when I was a teenager. It was one of my first online fandoms that I was really involved in. The first time I ever went to a Comic-Con was because one of the cast of that show was going. So yeah, I have a lot of love in my heart for that show. I'd been wanting to rewatch it for a while anyway, but then with it being brought up in Solitaire, it just drove home to me how much I missed it. So I finally rewatched it and got through all 5 seasons in less than a month. And then after that I started a rewatch of Shadowhunters, which has been a wild ride. I also rewatched In the Flesh, which is another niche British show that owns a large part of my heart. I've recently embarked on a rewatch of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, because why not? Oh, I also watched The Umbrella Academy in preparation for season 2 as well. So yeah, lots of TV. Maybe that was why I didn't film as many videos. I'm also realising that I desperately need to discover new shows to watch rather than just rewatching my old comfort favourites. So yeah, feel free to recommend some down in the comments. So please do let me know what you have been reading lately or watching. We can talk TV if you want to talk TV, that's fine. What stories have you consumed? And what books are you looking forward to? Tell me all the fictional things. I hope you guys are staying safe and well. I will see you next time. Bye!